Hey guys, you're listening to episode number 8, season 2 of Starter Set. I want to thank you for dropping by and tuning in, and encourage you to go and check us out on YouTube as well, because we have lots of awesome videos over there. We'd love to have you jump over there, check out the community, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all of those things. And with no other intro announcements here, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to our host for the beginning of the show. Hello and welcome back to the Starter Set. I am one of your hosts, Mark. I am joined today by none other than my legendary and ever faithful co-host, Ian, and the dead broke dad, Ralph himself.
Hey.
Guys, welcome back to the show, back in the studio tonight.
Thank you. I had so much fun last time, and I've been sitting in this booth all week long waiting for you guys to come back, so it's getting a little bit gamer in here.
Yeah, a little stank in the booth. Little stank.
Hey, you know, that's what gamers do. Have you ever been to a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament? You know, I mean, that's where they live. That's the sweet spot.
You know,
right? That BO.
DVN, I once took my brother-in-law, who's not a card gamer, into a local game shop, a comic book shop, and there was people playing Magic the Gathering, and he's always said that to him, card games are full-grown adults sitting in lawn chairs drinking Capri Suns, because that is what he witnessed. And that day, I bought Legend of the Five Rings starter decks, and I gave him. I never played it. I still have never played it. By the way, I bought them and never had anyone to play with. I gave him a copy of a card called Outer Walls. I don't know if you remember. It would have probably been original L5R. But it was a card called Outer Walls, and he loves it.
Card.
Yep, it's a crap card.
Yep. He has it like hanging from his rearview mirror in his car still. He's had it there.
Okay.
It's like a memory from the time he saw full-grown men drinking Capri Suns in lawn chairs playing cards.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's a certain level of there's different levels, you know, of gamer stank, you know.
Yep.
And the key there is never go full Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
That's the
yeah.
It's at its worst.
Not, you know, hashtag not all Yu-Gi-Oh players, but hashtag every Yu-Gi-Oh group has that one player. So,
right.
You know,
there's like that one Yu-Gi-Oh player who's been listening to our show just waiting for us to cover Yu-Gi-Oh, and now they're like, you know what? Damn it, I'm out.
Yeah, you know,
that's it.
You can keep waiting. It won't happen. Oh man, it's actually really funny how many players I've met recently that have left Yu-Gi-Oh to come to either Pokemon or Lorcana. It's been so many there. I don't know. I think that there are a lot of people sort of leaving that game and going to other games and finding other games. And then you've got this group. I'll be mean. You've got this group of degenerate combo hounds that are like, Yu-Gi-Oh's my game. It's all one giant combo.
That's true.
And I'm like, all right, and have fun, bud.
Puzzle. It's cracking the puzzle. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh since Toon World was a card. That was like set one.
Then both Dad and I have played more recently than that, but still a long time ago. In a galaxy far, far away, and boom, transition.
And here we go.
Very nicely done.
Talking about Star Wars. Ralph, what is one location, season, part of Star Wars lore that you really wish would be more deeply explored?
I was thinking about that, and not to be repetitive, I really would like to see again the space lane be more flavorful. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important. Ian was telling me.
I think the question is just general Star Wars, like
it could be a
the
show,
entire world,
a movie. It could
like
be
what's an area
anything
of the Star Wars universe that you want to see more of?
The holiday special.
Oh no,
the more holiday specials.
Yeah, that's what I want to see.
Answer. This is great. That's a great answer.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, I want them to go
Dad,
there.
For coming in. We'll, you know,
no, listen.
We'll just go ahead and you can sign off now.
Okay, thank you. My podcast career is over.
Ralph has resigned. Like he's just accepted reality, and we have it, right? Like we still have hopes of cool things that Star Wars could do, and he's just
Mhm.
That's right.
accepted the fact that the thing he'll be least disappointed with would be a Star Wars holiday special. That
A
I
little
actually
hack.
feel like that is wisdom more than anything else.
You know, it's not too far off. They did a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. If
They
you don't
did.
think Disney won't do a Star Wars holiday special, you're
There is a
kidding
Lego.
yourself.
There's a Lego Star Wars holiday special.
My
Well, now
God.
you guys know that there was actually a holiday
Oh,
special,
yeah.
of course, right? And it was
Oh,
really
yeah.
terrible after the first movie came out, and it was it's
And wasn't it like Chewbacca's family had a
Yeah,
like there was
yeah.
a kid, a baby
Life
Chewbacca
Day
or
or something like that. They
Yeah.
were, you know,
Oh,
and
boy.
then there was a nod to it in the Weird Al video about White and Nerdy, where he gets it undercover because for the longest time you couldn't get a copy of it because it was so terrible they didn't issue it on VHS or anything like that, so you had to get it, in the black market,
Yeah.
because it was so bad. But now, of
It's
course,
like
you can.
the it's like the Atari ET game that was so
Yes.
bad that everybody dumped it in landfills and returned
Mhm.
it, and now you can't find it.
I had a copy of that too.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go. Ian, how about you? What is an era or a region or a piece of Star Wars that you wish would be more explored?
Okay, so I actually thought about this a lot, and I was thinking about it through the lens of if Disney decided to make a show that was really exciting and interesting in the Star Wars universe, what is something I think would make a good show? And I decided the thing that would make a good show would be a drama around pod racing or swoop racing racers,
Oh, okay.
right? It's such a big part of the Star Wars sort of background, right? Oh, you've got all these cool vehicles, and then you have the pod racing scene in episode 1, and then you never see that side of the universe again.
Mhm.
And the closest thing you get to cool vehicle stuff is the speeder bikes in Return of the Jedi. I mean, that's the next coolest vehicle thing. But like, think about like what you see for like a Fast and the Furious, like OG street racing, sort of drama, and imagine overlaying that sort of thing into like the crime-ridden, like Hut influenced gambling circuit of the pod racing rings, like
Would
wouldn't
you
that
want it
be
animated
cool?
or live action?
So okay, so I think live action would be sick, no doubt. I think it could work really well animated. There's sort of an anime film that is notorious, but in like kind of a good way, like a cult classic called Redline.
Redline.
And the animation style for that, it's just really over the top, but it really leans into like the thrumming bass and the sounds of the track,
Mhm.
and then just these hyper stylized, basically, space cars, right, racing each other on planets and just going so insanely fast, right? I think you could do a similar sort of stylistic driven Star Wars anime almost around pod racing or swoop racing.
I think that could be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super unique.
Yeah.
I'm gonna because so my two favorite things that Star Wars put out recently in live action has been Rogue One and Andor. I
Mhm. Andor.
genuinely enjoyed both of those.
Andor was fantastic.
It really
especially.
was.
Sort
from
of
a
like a
show.
slightly slower moving, sort of like people who are kind of defeated before the movie ever starts out, right? Like
Yeah.
under the thumb of the Empire,
Yeah.
Really never going to be your heroes. I really liked that, even though you kind of already knew the conclusion of both of those things to a certain extent before they ever got off the ground. The story along the way was interesting. The character development was interesting. And Star Wars is a really bad time of actually creating plots that are intriguing. They do much better when the plot's already told to them, and then they just create characters between A and B.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think it's the revolt in the Battle of Ryloth, which is the Twi'lek homeworld in
Oh,
Clone
yeah.
Wars, where the Separatists come and take control of it, and there's like a Twi'lek revolt. And Twi'leks are really like the sensual dancers in Jabba's palace in many ways, and until then. And there's some really cool characters, political, military characters in those episodes of Clone Wars. And I've always wanted to see something go back to Ryloth. And so I think it could be cool to have like a 6-shot or 8-shot season of episodes that capture some of the planning for overthrowing the Separatists on Ryloth. I think I would really enjoy that.
Well, and then you actually have some cool stuff in Star Wars Rebels where you've got, those same freedom fighters, and like Hera's father is like the leader of the Ryloth freedom fighters. Now the Separatists are gone, and now all of a sudden the Empire's swooping in, and all of the, people in Ryloth are just exhausted from perpetual conflict. And it's, I think that'd be a really cool, setting.
Yeah, I think Ryloth's just a cool city. Like the that's the one I think with like the energy bridge, right, that goes across to it.
I think so.
I think so. I just always
I
thought
know it's
Ryloth
like a lot
cool.
of like planes and stuff on the planet. Yeah.
It just brought Twi'leks to life for me and made me really, really love Twi'leks. I think that would be a cool location for sure. Well, today we are talking about Star Wars, and we're going to be talking about the card game Star Wars Unlimited by Fantasy Flight Games. Last episode, going off the shelves hot and ready. This episode sold out. So suddenly hard to get your hands on, and we're going to be talking about all of that in this episode. We're going to take a dive into a couple of different elements. Go ahead.
Hot and ready, much like Little Caesar's Pizza. Out of stock, very unlike Little Caesar's Pizza.
Yeah, Little Caesar's Pizza, always ready to go.
Always ready, and no one wants it.
Yeah. This will make you poor. Little Caesars won't. Another not similarity. But Little Caesars makes you happy until it doesn't, and hopefully that's not the case with this game. There is a turning point.
Whatever it was, as soon as you said hot and ready, I'm just like, I can't let this one go. I had like a solid 5 seconds of, is this funny enough to derail everything? And I'm like, no, but I can't stop myself.
Well, it was. It was great. It was. You did a great job, Ian.
Thank you.
Little Caesars, the Jar Jar Binks of pizza establishments.
That should be their slogan. Little Caesars, the Jar Jar Binks of pizza.
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh,
that's funny.
We're going to talk about Star Wars. We're going to talk a little bit about its launch. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the different, really cool cosmetics and like peripherals that you can get with the game. And there's some out there. I picked up a few, not a ton. And then we're also going to be
all. Yeah.
As in all, I didn't pick up all.
Honey, I need a deck box. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about the family. There is literally on our to-do list on our fridge right now a list of my
refill
debts.
the college fund that's on the fridge right now.
Yeah, right now. I've gone hog wild. Hog wild. Anyway, we're going to talk about the early meta decks and how that's impacting the secondary market, and then we're just going to touch on the fact that this game, according to Asmodee, is sold out. We have a reprint date, that sort of stuff. But we got to the point where we got to the end of supply. And certainly in other games, that's been a really bad thing. In some games, that's spoken to the intensity of like for the game, right? How passionate people are about it. We're going to talk about whether or not we think that's good or bad, or why it's a mix of both. And so let's start off with launch. So Star Wars Unlimited launched with a pre-release weekend where they sold a $30 pre-release pack that came with a Luke and a Vader leader who had limited edition Luke and Vader, a section of really crappy tokens, a rule book, a quote-unquote premium cardboard deck box, which is really just a deck box that can fit a 50-card deck double-sleeved with a sideboard in it, so you can get all of that in it. A deck divider, like a little divider to go in your deck box, and 6 card packs. In that, you were to open up and pre-release those 6 packs, use either Luke or Vader or one of the leaders you got in your 6 packs. Stores were supplied with 30 health bases of all 4 colors. You could choose any one of those that you wanted. You didn't have to be restricted to your packs. You made a deck and you played. The following week, the game released in earnest with a 2-player deck or 2-player box that included a Luke and a Vader pre-made deck, along with 4 different cards that you got a playset of that could only be grabbed inside of that 2-player box. It also came with a rule book, 2 player mats that would section off things. They're just plastic player mats or paper ones that you could, section off, like where the space lane was. Up on the other side, one was a poster of Vader, one was a poster of Luke, and then they also released boxes and packs. So boxes, like boxes of packs and packs. 24 packs in a box. Most places get them online for about $95 a box. In stores, usually anywhere between $110 to $120 for a box of packs. So I'm interested to know both of your experience, because you guys, you got a box of packs, right? And then you
Yes.
also got the 2-player stuff. So tell me about your experience with those 2 things in good, bad. Did you think that the launch, at least initially, was good from Fantasy Flight here?
Well, I'm going to let Dad answer that, but before he does, I'll just remind the listener, we do have the video of Dad and I unboxing the 2-player starter deck, taking a look at the decks, and then doing sort of a tutorial gameplay. So we play the decks against each other. We slow down enough to sort of explain the rules and read some of the cards, and so you can check that out on the YouTube section. So go over to YouTube and find Camp Legend. If you haven't yet, there's a lot of bonus content on there I think you'll like, covering a bunch of different games. So check it out. Anyways, back over. Dad, answer Mark's question.
Okay. Well, as Ian said, we cracked open a 2-player starter deck that came in handily right on launch day, was delivered right to Ian's mail. And the in traditional the components were mostly good. As far I don't think it was quite up to Fantasy Flight standards for the extras. You had 2 little cardboard boxes that can hold the cards, but I don't know how well they'll do with sleeves over a amount of time. The tokens were, I was disappointed with those, having bought many other things. I thought $35 was a little pricey for starter decks, but I also know that, food is up, 20% and inflation is up high. So, okay, that's fine. But but for essentially the price of a good, well-tested, affordable board game, what you got was a good game, but not a lot of extras. Basically, we tossed the box. The tokens we have no intention to use other than for the video, so you could clearly see that I have 10 points of damage, on my base as far as that goes. Obviously, a lot of testing went into those 2 decks, though. Because they played very well against each other. It was overwhelmingly a positive experience for us. It was very easy for us to get into because we're experienced gamers. As we mentioned last week, there was no surprises. I mean, there were keywords that were slightly different, but them. It's trample, it's breakthrough, it's quick strike, it's, whatever it happens to be. So we just got right into it. And as Ian also said last week, unlike Lorcana, the starter decks were actually good. You actually wanted to sit down and play with them. And I know that Ian has been breaking them apart to do some other things with them, but I think there's a little bit of regret to that because they were finely tuned against each other. And so I think for that and the thoughtfulness that went into that, and the quality of the cards are really good, I think that was a good first foot forward. Now, I will say this, that trying to get new players into it, it may be a little bit more difficult. That $35 price point is a lot higher than even if you go into Target and spend, what, 16 or 17 for Lorcana with a pretty picture of Moana or Scrooge McDuck or Mickey or something like that. And right now, you can't get those. Well, they're getting harder and harder to find anywhere, but you can't go into a Walmart. You can't go into a Target right now. I thought they were going to be available mass market. At this point, they're game stores only, which is good. They're selling out in specifically game stores only. But I am concerned that, getting, casual and, players that would be attracted to Lorcana to come and try Star Wars at that higher price point, I'm a little concerned about that. But again, we enjoyed ourselves. We love Star Wars. We love the game. So far, so good in our book, I would say, Ian.
Oh, for sure. I think you nailed it with our thoughts on the starter decks. I will say this too. I think I'll be curious to see what they do for future expansions. Will they maintain the 2-player starter deck model, or will they switch to a single deck model at a different price point? One thing that's really fun about the Lorcana starter decks, as bad as they are, is you get a pack in it. So you do get a little bit of feeling like you get something else.
Yeah.
And so my thought, mainly, it would be maybe cool if they put a pack in it. But I also think that what would be neat would be in the future if instead of doing any packs or anything like that, just make some nicer tokens to go in there. And just like, Pokemon does a great job of adding just little dice. They just throw dice into everything, right?
And the coin usually.
And the coin, yeah. So I would love to see like a coin version of the initiative marker. It's like plastic and not like or metal, even better, and not like a little slip of cardboard that's just. I think I lost it already.
Sure. Oh, well, you didn't lose much.
And so I know, right? And so I think that would be a big step up, but. I agree. The starter decks were very nice. I think it's cool that they gave you a full playset of some cards, especially the cards that they gave you playsets of are good playable cards. And that's one thing I'll say, and I don't want to get too deep into this because this is a slightly different discussion, but just as a preview, I think most of the cards in the game are theoretically playable.
Yeah.
Now, not all of them are. Obviously, you can't fit everything into a 50-card deck. But they are clearly intending for every card to have a use, which is something that even, Pokemon does a terrible job at. Pokemon's got a ton of pack filler, right? And I would argue that Lorcana does a better job, but still not a perfect job, because Lorcana has some cards that are obvious pack filler. Now, not a lot of them, but they're there, right? And I didn't feel that way about Star Wars Unlimited. Now, yes, the deeper we get into the game and the more people understand what's strong and what makes a strong card in the game, more people will see, yeah, this card sucks, right? But just because, yeah, this card sucks in reality does not necessarily mean, yeah, this card was intended to suck, right? Which is, something that I have a personal distaste for pack filler. And when you can read when something is intentional pack filler, okay? Like they made a blank like 6-drop Little John in Lorcana, which has no effect and is just a stat stick, which only quests for 1. And it's a rare. This was clearly intended to disrupt the rare pulls with something that is obviously bad, right? So that irritates me. But I don't quite mind when, like, if we open the next Pokemon set that's coming out this Friday, if you pull Scizor EX, yeah, Scizor EX is likely not going to be strong, but it is also not pack filler, right?
Yeah,
it's like you can build a deck with Scizor EX.
Sure.
So, it is what it is. Now, I just want to talk briefly about the booster packs experience in the booster box. That felt like an incredible value for what I purchased it at. I mean, I got it from, online on pre-order for like 90, 95. I don't exactly remember. I ordered from the same place as you, Mark. So if you recall how much we paid for it.
From Game Nerds was their pre-order price. Yeah.
And that felt like an insane value. 24 packs, I believe. And all of the packs have 16 cards.
That's correct.
Cards.
Yeah.
So 14 cards, 1 leader, 1 base, so 16 total. And yes, the leaders and bases eventually become superfluous after you've opened enough packs, right? But I mean, we opened the whole box and we didn't get a Palpatine, or we missed one other.
We
a
did
Han.
not get any of the bases that have powers. The 25
Yeah, we didn't
point
get any
bases.
of the 20. Yeah, and we didn't get a Palpatine. We didn't get a Han. So like,
Right.
you know, it's going to take a long enough time, and plus you can always still pull a hyperspace version, right?
Right.
So that's cool. And then I also will say, I kind of liked the packs and like the sort of paper composite. They were a little easier to open than a lot of the plastic. It felt like, I don't know. I mean, you know how it is. Like, I'm sure there's a certain amount of waste that goes into all of these things. I
Sure.
hope that this paper is recycled or something. But I mean, you feel weird opening up a bunch of plastic and then dumping it in the trash. Like, I feel weird about it. Millennial guilt being what it is, right? But like, I feel weird about that. And so like, every time I open a pack of Lorcana, I hear the crinkle of the plastic, and boy, you get that, you know, was it serotonin or whatever, the you get that chemical in your brain. It's like, ooh, yay, I'm opening
dopamine,
something
yeah.
fun. Dopamine,
Yep.
that's thank you.
Yeah.
You know, just like, oh wow, woo. And then you're like, okay, in the trash. And so I don't know. And so I liked the pack materials again that felt like a good value. I don't know. As far as launches go, we can nitpick things. But the difference, and I think the way that I compare this is between Lorcana and Star Wars Unlimited. And I think both in terms of the quality of the products, the value of the products for what you pay, it becomes clear, like, hey, this is Ravensburger's first time, and it's not FFG's first rodeo.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Agreed.
And that comes through. It's not perfect, at least, but I think overall that release event, or not release event, but that release week, and getting to play with the stuff and opening up and not feeling like I wasted money, that was nice.
And you know, just to tag to that, you know, it's one thing if they had. We know things, printing costs are up and supply chains are still recovering, et cetera. If they had to cut the quality on something to save money, I think the choices were good to save on. You know, give us little teeny super thin tokens, but not skimp on the quality of the cards. The cards are good stock. They feel good and sturdy. I have been interested, for example, in the versus the second version of it that's been out for a few years that was very different gameplay. The number one thing that turned me off from taking that dive was that I read that the card stock was terrible. They said it's basically like index cards. And, you know, FFG gave us really solid cards. They snap, they shuffle well. They don't seem to bend much when you're in the sleeves and you're shuffling around. You're like, these are pretty good.
They're
So
sturdy,
if they had, so I think they make good choices with that.
Yeah, I just wish they hadn't made some budget cuts around Chewbacca's leader art, but besides that,
Worm Chewbacca
and Han Solo,
just awful.
Worm Chewbacca and Elf Han Solo.
It's so bad.
Where's my 5-year-old picture of Chewbacca on the fridge? Here it is. Let's put that in the car.
You know, I think they try to channel some of like the Disney XD energy into it, and it just did not.
Nah.
It is not good. It is very bad. It is very bad.
Yeah.
You know, for me in terms of release, I was very happy with the release of this game. I felt like I could get it. I felt like local game shops were taken care of. I felt like they weren't taken advantage of. I felt like everyone was driven to get to their local game store. And in the first week, there was events everywhere. Like, we're going to talk about this probably at some point. But I mean, there was a huge event already that happened in Europe this past week, a big tournament. We already have a top 8 out of it. They put out information about their competitive format and how you can go to these various types of openers, and then, you know, theoretically get invited to the Galactic Championship. They put out a cycle for drafting, and then a normal play, and then store showdowns that have right now it is like every store who does store showdowns gets a unique like inscribed Mace Windu card if you're in the top 8
Ooh.
inside of your store showdown. They released these little packs that have unique cards that can't be received anywhere else to your stores. If you show up and play, you'll get one. If you show up and play in these first couple of weeks, and those have a 3-card pack that you can get the hyperspace of the cards that are in the 2-player set, so that you can get the hyperspace of R2D2 and C3PO, and it's guaranteed to have 2 hyperspaces and then a rare alternate art of one of like 8 or I think it's 20 different cards that they did alt art for, and special foil treatments on them. So all of that stuff, I thought, like, launch at least, I could get product. Like, I wasn't being monitored to make sure that I only bought 5 packs, right? I pre-ordered a box. I went to a local game shop and I was like, can I buy a box? And they're like, yeah, if you'll buy a box, we'll cut you a deal $115 for the box. And I was like, really? Just going to let me buy like a whole box? It's like, yeah, you can buy a box. And that was really awesome. Like, I really enjoyed that. DBN, you had something to share there.
Yeah, I just want to throw out, I think there's, I think that maybe we're maligning, and I get where you're going with this. I know you didn't explicitly say it, but I think we may be tempted to unfairly malign Lorcana for having a similar issue of running out of stock, but not having the issue of like everything being, unable for the average player to attain. The difference between this and that is, one, obviously the Disney IP had been being hyped up, and this had a much quieter sort of media tour leading up to it, right? I think there was also the big thing that happened was at Gen Con before launch, the Ravensburger table was flooded and didn't know what to do and didn't have enough product there, and which immediately circulated into the collector communities. And I am on the record, and I know that there are people listening that are collectors, and I do not say that all collectors are bad or stupid, right? But the collector scene, I think, while it financially backs some of these games, I think it is something that needs to be heavily curtailed with intentionality, be it by these card game developers, because they are rabid, and there are a lot of them that are extremely... they have toxic buying patterns because they will try to snatch up as much as humanly possible, pull the things they want, and scalp the rest. And that's what happened to Lorcana for the first chapter especially, and then the second chapter briefly. Now Lorcana's at a point where Ravensburger has adjusted their, their printing, and now I'm happy to say that in the third set, accessibility is not an issue. There are plenty of cards out there. And so Star Wars did not get that buzz leading up to it, that negative spotlight put on it, which signaled to all of these scalpers and all of the collectors, go buy, snatch it all up and sit on it and wait for the price to jump and then sell. And so
it wasn't like a stock market game nearly as much as Lorcana was, at least in set 1. But that's 100% accurate.
Realistically speaking, though, you could argue they had the exact same problem. It just, because of the way the community reacted to it, it may or may not be as exacerbated in terms of the effects felt by the average players like ourselves.
Well, I agree, and I agree with the fact that if I think Star Wars Unlimited had received the same attention, and if it had gone to big box stores like Walmart or Target, we would have seen a similar issue. The part that I disagree with is that every local game shop owner in my area felt like they got shafted by Ravensburger on set 1. And every store who's carrying this, now I'll admit this, not many people are carrying it. Like, it is not easy to find a store that has this. I went out to Sandusky, Ohio this weekend, and I was like, I'm gonna just look and see if there's a game shop, and there was no one in anywhere in Sandusky. You had to drive an hour to find a shop that actually sold this. And so, to be fair, I think a lot of shops were hesitant. A lot of my shops in my
Yes.
area that I called, I said, we're TCG'd out. Like we have One Piece that we're selling, and Yu-Gi-Oh that we're selling, and Pokemon
Right.
that we're selling, Lorcana that we're selling. We have too many. We can't take on another one. We're going to kind of play the wait and see game. And as they played the wait and see game, the community came out after the first week. People really liked this game. And then it was like they are buying like boxes and boxes and boxes of this game, like
Yeah.
crazy amounts. And now it's out. So the only thing that I would say that I like that FFG did better than what Ravensburger did is it seems to me that they treated the local store owners who were willing to bring their product into their brick and mortar shop. They treated them really, really well.
Mhm.
They gave them things that were free that they could give out to players. They provided them with an app that they built in order to help them run their pre-release events and then their future stuff. They're
Yep.
providing them with formats and rules and product. Like they funneled all of their product to the local game store. And I have a great deal of respect for that. And I think all of us would, because we all want our
Yes.
local game shops to do well.
Absolutely.
And I know that local game shops were burnt, maybe not by Lorcana now, but Lorcana at least at release, right?
Yeah, they were burnt a little bit. I think it was more, and I'm not sitting here defending Lorcana, because we are all on the record as being unhappy with how that went down. But I'm rather just pointing out that I think Star Wars is getting, and FFG is maybe getting a little bit of a pass on not having enough product, which is not good. I mean, I think it could signal good things in the same way that it signaled to Lorcana, hey, this is popular, do print more, keep going. Those were good signals, but at the same time, I mean, you never want to be in the situation of being like, oh, we cannot accept more money. That's where they're at. They cannot accept more money because they have no product to give. And so, I mean, that's not a good thing. And it's also, and we're going to, I think, transition to this at some point, that's also not a good thing for the competitive player base, because again, I'm very anti-collecting. Not that I personally begrudge anyone who's a collector, but rather because of the effect that collecting has on the availability of cards for the competitive scene, and the price of cards as singles for the competitive scene. I acknowledge that there is a balance to be struck. You don't want the cards to be worthless, right? Because then, nobody will buy packs, right? And if nobody buys packs, the companies stop printing.
Right.
But at the same time, there's a balance there between the availability of cards that are necessary for the competitive metagame, and what happens when either collectors, more in the case of what had happened early in Lorcana's range, and scalpers, which was especially bad for Lorcana. But I think both of those are clearly involved in what's going on with the singles market right now for Star Wars Unlimited. I mean, the reality, and we've had a lot of conversations, and especially a lot of comments on the video that Gibby and I made about, is Lorcana too expensive? And that I think are connected directly to what's going on here with some of the most expensive cards for Star Wars Unlimited. And I think that the struggle here, right, is finding, and something they're going to have to do, is find a balance between having things that are exclusive enough that the collectors want to buy a ton of packs and hunt for, but making it such that the cards, whether they are commons or legendaries, are accessible enough for players that are taking the game seriously from a competitive standpoint, that they are able to get them. And it is a symbiotic relationship. If no collectors, then packs don't get bought in mass, and then companies fold games. But if no game, right, and no attention to the competitive side of the game, then collectors will never go get it in the first place.
Yeah, that's a tough balance. Yeah, I'm sure it's a tough balance to strike. I want to move us on, because we're going to get into this a little bit in the singles market and the meta decks here in a minute. But I want to touch on something that I did think that went really well with release, was their partnership with Gamegenic. And I'm going to actually pass this to Ralph in a moment, because he's had a lot of time buying games,
Mhm.
and I'm sure sleeving, like we've all, like, DBN, you and I have opened up a lot of Pokemon stuff now,
Yeah.
ETBs that have sleeves in them, and they're okay.
They're
Mhm.
They're
not good.
okay.
No,
not
they're
great,
bad.
right?
They're bad. The
Well,
Lorcana, I not to keep bringing up Lorcana. The Lorcana sleeves are awful. They're
Are they really?
so bad.
Are they
The
really?
Pokemon sleeves are not good, but they are better than Lorcana sleeves.
yeah.
We haven't tried the Game Genic sleeves, but we did get playmats. So,
Okay.
Dad,
Oh, yeah, the play mats that's the only thing that I've actually physically had an encounter with the company that's working with FFG, and they are fantastic. As we had two of them, and we referred to them, and we played X-wing and a TIE fighter, and our favorite was the X-wing. It just really popped off,
the
just
X-wing one is beautiful.
Oh yeah, and they're the cards. It's the same artwork as the cards. So we're opening up packs and hey, this matches. That's awesome. Over the years, playing all these many games, often play mats were something exclusive that you would largely win. That was your prize when you would go into L5R versus or whatever. The mat was the big thing that you were going after. And then, of course, they always had, mats you could buy and you can design your own. So it's really, that's always great. I also noticed that they had the big tabletop ones that you can just lay out,
That one's
really
cool.
expensive, but
Two-player.
I was impressed with the quality of it. And I've seen some of these really interesting deck boxes, that fold down and do things. What I would really like to see, and I mentioned this just very briefly in the last episode, is a base counter. Themed, with some of the artwork, and maybe that looks like a ship or something. Darth Vader with it, with the
a
eyes
Death Star,
a
Death Star,
Death Star where
spinner.
you turn
Yeah.
30 to whatever and click on down. I would love to see that. The dice are fine, of course, and the little paper thin counters are okay, but that's the big thing that I would like to see. As far as sleeves go, Dragon Shield. Dragon Shield,
Yep.
Dragon Shield. I mean,
Yes.
if they're as good as Dragon Shield, man, they're doing something, because those are. Even when I'm
Gold
making
standard.
proxies of a game that I'm download for a PDF, like Doomtown or something like that, you can buy a lot of the things, go to drive through cards, and you can get these decks at 60 with 15 card side deck in PDF. I crank them out through old L5R cards or old Versus cards behind them. Dragon Shield, and they shuffle just like it's a brand new deck. So I hope that their sleeves are as good as that, because if they're not, I'll just stick with Dragon Shield.
At this point, we are so brand loyal. Once again, Dragon Shield, if you're listening, sponsor us.
Sponsor.
We're your biggest fans.
Well, I picked up some Game Genic sleeves because I wanted to give them a try. Now, I did not pick up the art sleeves. So the art sleeves, however, are the same quality as all of Game Genic's premium line of sleeves.
Nice.
So they didn't skimp on that. So they released, I think, Luke and Vader sleeves, maybe a few others. They also released double sleeving packs, which basically for $10 you get 100 sleeves and 100 inner sleeves. I got those in the matte. So matte inner sleeves, matte outer sleeves. I got flat black. They look fantastic. They feel really good. They're the nicest sleeves I've ever owned, but I've never owned Dragon Shield sleeves. I don't have the ability to make that comparison, but they are really nice. They shuffle great. They're really clear, super readable, really, really nice. I've heard nothing but positive things about the art sleeves. And
Great.
if Game Genic did the art sleeves at the same quality that they do their matte black sleeves, I don't like switching out cards. And so for me, it's like, I just stick with one color of sleeve, because then if I need to swap cards from one deck
You
to
don't
another,
have to
I can
take
do
them
that.
out.
Yeah,
exactly.
Do you know if Game Genic also did the previous FFG Star Wars collateral or peripheral products?
I don't know that. I know that they did everything for this.
I do remember that the art sleeves for the previous FFG card game were decent. Not as good as Dragon Shields, because not much is,
good.
but significantly better quality. than the Pokemon and the um and the Lorcana, ones where they'll peel, right? They basically have like a coating so they have the sleeve, and then there's like basically a thing sealed onto them, but they'll peel, which is just awful. And if you shuffle them more than I don't know 5 games, they just are useless.
Yeah,
And so I mean, and I'm rough on my sleeves, so I replace sleeves relatively frequently, because I do like a, what do you call it? Like a, I don't know what the term is, like a jam shuffle,
mash,
or smash shuffle,
whatever.
where like I don't do like the bridge and the riffle and everything, just because I don't care for that. I don't like bending cards. I've always been neurotic about what if I accidentally bend a card. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do this the mash shuffle, and of course that's hard on sleeves. So I will say it would be interested in picking up a set of the art sleeves, because the art is sick.
It looks really nice.
And if the quality is supposedly decent, I would be interested in comparing and contrasting.
Yeah. Well, the Game Genic stuff, I've heard nothing but good stuff. They came out with 2 deck boxes, these artwork soft boxes that are like $7 or $8 a pop, and they do fit a 50-card deck with the sideboard in them. And then they also came out with deck pods. Now, these are Star Wars Unlimited branded. They're sort of like the fake leather. The whole top of them actually comes off. It's all magnetized. The front panel comes off,
so
you
cool.
can slip your deck out. It lays flat in there, not vertical, like down flat. And then it has a separate drawer that slides out in the bottom for tokens. And it has on the flap that flips down, it has a spot to slide in your base. And on the side of the box, it has a hard plastic case that you put your leader in. So you can slide your leader right in to the front of that. You can pop that out, use the hard plastic case in your game. It's, clear front and back. So you can pop your leader out and use that to protect your leader. Those are really nice. They made a double pod that can fit 2 decks, 2 leaders, 2 bases. They made them in a variety of colors. I don't think it's not, I think it's not at all surprising that they actually made them in colors that match Magic the Gathering. And so I've heard of Magic the Gathering players who are Commander players who are like, this deck box is amazing. I want this. I want to bring up one other point with the products they released. They put out acrylic tokens too. There's an acrylic token pack.
I was going to ask, yeah. Did they?
Yeah, but it sold out like almost instantaneously everywhere.
Oh, good.
They didn't print anywhere near enough of those. Like everyone was like, these tokens are crap, acrylic tokens, can't get them. One thing that is interesting that Fantasy Flight did is they officially came out and they said at any official tournament at any level, the only products that you are allowed to use is specifically Game Genic Star Wars Unlimited playmats, art sleeves, or Game Genic, or it doesn't have to be Game Genic, but they have to be either no artwork, just flat monocolored playmats, or flat monocolored sleeves. And so you literally cannot bring a deck that has sleeves that are either not Game Genic Star Wars Unlimited, not even FFG's old sleeves that are Star Wars. You can't use those. Or you either have to use their stuff, or you have to use flat colored, monocolored stuff, including your mat. Now, I heard a couple of people talking online. Basically, I didn't realize this. There's a ton of like custom sleeve makers and custom mat makers out there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people with pretty inappropriate sort of anime waifu type of artwork.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a huge issue
Yeah.
in the Pokemon community actually right now. And there's been some articles and stuff written about like, judges need to be doing more to, make people put those away and disincentivize, people from bringing in non-family appropriate, stuff. And on one hand, I'm always sort of suspicious of things where they're dictating what products you can use and stuff like that. But I do think this is a smart choice considering what's going on in the other areas of the community and the ability, especially as far as sleeves go, to still use just standard matte sleeves. So I can all of my solid color, like Dragon Shields are almost always solid color
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah.
So it's like not something that a established gamer would have an issue with. I mean, I always just buy solid color dragon shields anyway. So I think that's actually, I'm sure someone somewhere is upset about it. I think it's actually a smart call.
At what level of tournament does that kick in?
I think it's like you're not going to run into it at your local game shop, but they have given local game shop like runners the ability to impose that rule, right? And
Okay.
so like if you're at your local like showdown or even your weekly gameplay, your local shop can impose that rule and say, hey, can't use anything except monocolor flat stuff or stuff from Star Wars. But I think where it really becomes like an issue is in their actual competitive scene
Mhm.
that is growing right now. And I'm trying to remember like there's these three things, and I'll try to look them up. There's these three things that revolve around the Galactic Championship,
Mhm.
and I think if you try to qualify or show up to play in any of those things, opens or qualified content, like qualified tournaments, you do have to adhere to that rule.
Well, I mean, you go to some restaurants, that they'll provide a jacket for you if you don't have one. I imagine, if a smart game store, if they want to impose that, will have some blank game mats set aside. It's really tough, I would think, to ask somebody, hey, you need to re-sleeve your entire 52 card deck here, with something blank. But I mean, if it's not superimposed on a casual night, okay, but to some degree, that's going to be a barrier to entry, for people wanting to play the game. That, wait a minute, okay, I got to buy the cards, and then I have to buy a game mat if I want to play a game mat, and okay, I don't know.
I mean, nobody needs mats necessarily. I
No,
mean, it's
no.
obviously it's better. I will say, I think that the key there, right, is have them for sale. Like,
Yeah.
and anybody who's making it to a certain level of competitive play is going to understand the rules.
Probably so. Yeah.
So I think as
I'm only
much
a
as
little miffed at that, not a huge amount.
I think realistically speaking, like if you look at Pokemon tournaments, there's always like somebody complaining about a judge telling them to re-sleeve their deck because
Yeah.
their sleeves are too beat up, and there's a concern over marked cards. And while I do think some of those things can be over the top sometimes, I think for protecting the I mean, can you imagine if they streamed the world championships of Star Wars, and especially in its infancy, you can see them not having a ton of like production value and stuff.
Sure.
And and somebody shows up with an anime waifu playmat in the finals,
or Star
you know
Trek.
what I mean? Like,
or Star Trek mat.
Oh, yeah,
just
even
really
worse,
confuse
Star
everybody.
yeah, 7 of 9 is on the playmat. Anime 7 of 9.
May the Federation be with you. Oh wait, I'm confused.
So anyways, I think it's a good call.
Okay.
I think it's in these planetary qualifiers, the regional qualifiers, the sector qualifiers that all lead into the Galactic Championship. I think that's really where you're going to see a lot of these rules imposed, which I didn't even think of that.
I love
right?
that Thrawn artwork.
I have never even remotely been tempted to buy sexy card sleeves. Like that has never even crossed my mind as a thing that I would do.
Right.
So but I understand, that it has crossed some people's mind, and that's how they enjoy playing the game for one reason or another.
I guess.
And so but I understand them wanting to protect against that, especially if they are trying to create a space where it's like, hey, you can teach your 12-year-old how to play this game, and you can watch the competitive scene on Twitch or on YouTube with your son or your daughter and learn how to play with them. And if you're wanting to protect just some of the classiness of your game, sometimes you have to remove the trashiness of others, right?
Yes.
So
fully agree.
Yeah, so it's something you have to be careful of. Anyway, so with all of that being said, with the release of the game, because the game was on Tabletop Simulator and FFG did not take it down and still hasn't taken it down, and they may have put it on there, I don't know. The meta wasn't solved, but it was it was kind of clear what was going to be good whenever the game came out. And one of those things was Energy Conversion Lab, which is the rare green Command base, along with the fact that Command, as a secondary faction, was always just going to be really, really, really good. So we have 3 meta decks, and I'll actually throw links to them into the description of this episode. Those 3 top decks right now, 1 control, 1 arguably mid-range, and then 1 aggro, Sabine, which is heroism aggression, along with green is our command, is your aggro list. The mid-range deck is Boba Fett, along with green or command, and that is going to be your mid-range Boba deck. It runs both Boba Fett and Vader. It's arguably the best deck in the format right now. And then Iden, which is a control deck, which is running blue villainy and is also running command strictly for the purposes of ramp, and also overwhelming barrage, which is an incredibly good card in the format. I guess it's not a surprise to me that there's 3 decks that are out that are good. I think it's a good thing that we have a good mid-range, good control. And I would say that it's back and forth between Krennic and Iden, but they're very, very similar decks, right? Same colors. And good that we have an aggro. But a little concerning that all of them are green, or at least partially command, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. DBN, when you're looking at this with your years of gaming experience, think it's healthy, not healthy? Where are you at on the meta?
So I think it actually is not the worst that a set 1 of a card game has been. So we've experienced a lot of first expansions, and typically those things tend to go one of 2 ways. Either aggro is unstoppable or control is unstoppable because of the lack of options, and the fact that there is a good amount of different speeds of play. There's a good amount of proactivity and reactivity in terms of the cards and the way that decks are playing against the opponent in terms of establishing their own threats. There are a lot of situations where, like, we've talked about this way in the past for Runeterra, but just for general, especially Hearthstone clone combat style games, there's usually this axis, of you've got the x-axis, which is slow game pace in terms of when they want to slow the game down. They want to win and run, grind the opponent out of resources and win late. And then you have obviously aggro or fast game speed. And then on the y-axis, of course, you've got proactivity and reactivity. In terms of proactive, control is going to be putting out a bunch of bulky things that just get in your way, right? Like maybe a deck that's really leaning heavy into sentinels or something like that. And then a reactive control deck might be looking at like a ton of things that just kill things as they come up and not really establish any presence of its own until near the end of the game. And a highly aggressive deck that's putting out just a bunch of beefcakes and swinging at the face, that's proactive. And an aggro deck that is slowing down what the opponent's doing while also establishing threats, that's a more reactive aggro deck. And I actually think that this is in a pretty healthy place, in that you see a good mix of speeds and a good mix of proactivity versus reactivity. Now, I think the problem is what you just highlighted, Mark, which is that command does seem to be the premier color. One of the things about having a game where you have access to 6 colors, and you will always be playing 3 of them. I'm including villainy and heroism for the sake of this conversation,
right? That's fair. I mean, they have cards that are exclusive to those factions. Yeah.
Right. What that means is that, where many other games will have, you only ever have access to 2. In a game where you have access to 3, you will have a lot of decks that are leaning heavily into a certain 2-color combination and then just picking up a 3rd color for whatever the best card or 2 is. And command having significantly, noticeably strong removal options in terms of things like, and also some ramp in terms of like Super Laser Technician, Dad's favorite card.
Super Laser.
Yeah, that card. That card.
Yeah. Overwhelming Barrage, like you mentioned, and also obviously any villainy deck will probably just be happy to play Darth Vader. And so it's like, well, in this scenario, why not just play, if you're already playing villainy, let's say cunning and villainy or aggression and villainy, why not just go grab a base that's green and jam Vaders in? And then run a couple Imperials on the bottom end. You know what I mean? So like, and actually it doesn't even need to be Imperials. It just has to be villainy characters. So I think that is to be expected with a limited card pool. People are going to go grab the thing that's easiest to fill out the last 6 to 9 slots in their deck. And then obviously you've got decks that are dedicated command focused lists, and you can't really blame them for being strong, right? They're leaning into the synergies in command. I think that the thing that surprises me is that the really, really potent double color cards seem to have been phased out by and large. We just saw the results come in from sort of the first semi-big event. I think it was in Europe. And we saw every single one was using command, and all of them were tricolor decks. Now, I know that there's currently, and I imagine this will change with future card editions, but there's currently each faction has 2 or 3 double color, I think 3 double color cards, where it's
3.
like aggression is literally a card, and it's like you have to have double aggression. And then Saw Gerrera is the other one for red, and I think there's an action or something. My point is, I think it's a little surprising and maybe a little, disappointing that we're not seeing decks lean into, a dedicated, double color deck so that they can get access to those really potent and interesting cards. But just because it's disappointing doesn't mean it's not also surprising. I think as far as, and I'm just going to sum this up by saying I've seen significantly less healthy metagames. And I also think that like some of the things that people are worried about, like especially with aggro being like decent, aggro in this case will keep control in check, right?
Yep.
And when that happens, control is prevented from getting too greedy, right? So when aggro has decent options, control has to play more low to the ground, which means that more experimental decks or decks that are playing, sort of at varying speeds or trying to pull off combos are likely to be able to have a chance against control. Because typically in a control heavy meta where you end up with just a bunch of greed piles, decks that are less efficient but hoping for bigger synergistic payouts are never able to survive because they have to assemble pieces that will never see the light of day because they just get blown up every time they hit the field. And to my limited reading of both these deck lists and viewing of a lot of tabletop games on YouTube, it does seem like the potential for things like a Grand Admiral Thrawn deck playing, vigilance, cunning, and villainy can play up against a Boba Fett deck and have a shot and even take a win.
Yeah.
I also think the side decks are a huge component of keeping any one strategy from getting too good, because as soon as one strategy becomes extremely good, unlike in a lot of other card games where all of a sudden you have to dedicate deck space to dealing with that, now you can side deck those things in, and then when you play your first game in a best of 3, you can make those adjustments and tech for the things that you were worried about that matchup. So all of that to say, I think this game, and I'm sure not everybody's happy, and also you all know there's always the possibility for a hard left turn somewhere in here. Like Runeterra looked great after the first set or two, and then took a hard turn and never recovered. But from just the first set, it looks extremely promising as a relatively well-balanced competitive card game. I'm pretty darn impressed.
Ralph, how about you? You played a lot of card games as well.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, having looked over these, just a couple of things. I mean, Ian hit a lot of the things that so I'm in total agreement with a lot of that. But one thing that strikes me, in addition to the fact that you do have controlling mid-range, a definite control, and you have an aggro, that's healthy right off the bat. You got the little bit of, and it's not quite rock, paper, scissors either, because I think this, and this is one thing that I really like about this game so far. This is a smart game. Timing is so important. When do I bring this character out that's going to give me a bonus, but he's going to be, exhausted and subject to attack? Oh, I think I'll pass here and let this next, or maybe I'll just, particularly late game, I'll put down a small figure here because I really want this guy, to be impactful in the next turn. And I'm looking at particularly at the Boba Fett deck, and it has a lot of things that really matter when you play them, not just a matter of, oh, I'm just going to throw it out there. Okay, Sabine Wren is a little bit more, predictable in that, hey, it's good card. This is the good card I should play. But even that, it's got options to it. Do you slow down? Do you move forward? I'm very, heightened with that. I love sideboards. That's one thing about Yu-Gi-Oh that I always got a big kick out of. In fact, one of our favorite things to do was to try to build a deck with Yu-Gi-Oh when we played back when Ian was very, very young. But when we played was to try to use that sideboard to totally change the direction of the game, almost like building a separate deck when we subbed these other ones in. And it didn't usually work, but it was a ton of fun to think about.
There was one or two that we actually did pretty well with. We did like a switch deck where you play game one in a set one way and then swap, because that was a generous 15 card side deck.
Yeah.
And so you could just fully go yoink and put in 15 new cards, and as long as you could do it quickly, there's some cool opportunities. I don't think that's going to be possible. I think this
with
is 10 cards.
10 and a 50 card deck. No, this is teching. This is, getting the things that might help you in the next match. Sure.
Healthy.
But, and I am concerned about that. I mean, I don't know how fast these games go with really experienced players. Can they get to that third game consistently, particularly when when control is kind of heavy? Is it going to move along that much where these things will matter? The one thing that I noticed looking at these, though, that in addition to Darth Vader being the card to choose, if you look at all three of these, the ground unit segment of the deck is much heavier than the space on each. It's like 30, 10, 30, 15, 25, 10. So we are seeing that, the ground side is way more important at this point. It's like, space is doing important things to keep people from sneaking in, getting in some last minute shots, things like that. But that's a little interesting. All three of these are heavily playing characters to the ground. Hey, it's more fun. You can have Jabba, and Bib Fortuna over there. And what do you get over here? Oh, here comes the next wing. So, I mean, thematically.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think we'll probably start to see is more space heavy decks, maybe where you start to gum things up in the ground area and then, really start sending in some major ships on the space side. And that will be interesting to see. But I'm heightened by this. And one other thing too is that if on the Sabine deck, I was looking at this. You guys sent over this, and the way currently, since I don't have a game shop near me, and I'm not. This is kind of a I'm not dumping a ton of money into gaming right now. My busier time of the year comes up a little bit later in the year, so it's like I'm holding back. And then Ian, I'm sharing these things with Ian. So when it comes to buying singles for Pokemon, so when we get together, we can test out his decks. Hey, that's really great. But as you've mentioned, and we've talked a lot about, is that Lorcana and now Star Wars Unlimited have become very expensive games to chase these rares that are impactful cards, not just because of pretty artwork. It's kind of, I don't want to go as far as saying pay to win, but I mean, the cards, the Vader cards that do these major things. However, one of my favorite things to do is to find substitute cards. And I looked at the Sabine deck, and frankly, most of it is affordable. You just have, the robot, Cassian's buddy. What is his name? It's right there.
K2SO.
Yeah,
K2SO.
he's kind of pricey. and then there's one of the events that's in a lot of the decks.
Yeah, for a cause I
For
believe
a
in.
cause, yeah, they're a little pricey. The red 3 is a little bit pricey, but they're easy to substitute. So you can get a respectable budget deck for some of these, and then you can improve it as you go along. And then maybe you'll crack one. Maybe you'll get, a red 3, and then you can slip it in and start building that up, when you crack a pack. So I'm heightened by that too, that's it's fun to be able to find those substitutes. And frankly, with a 50 card deck as opposed to a 30 or a 40 card deck, you're not always, you're having backup cards. Yeah, you'd much rather have this one card on a 4-drop, but this other one's okay if you didn't draw it. This one will do in a pinch. So I like what I'm seeing.
I don't. Well, this is a separate discussion. The price of the things. But
yeah.
I will say, I do think that you're right. There's fun in building on a budget. I think that you and I, not to sort of again date ourselves, right? But you and I came up playing card games in a time where the singles market did not exist.
Not much.
And so trading
was
actually happened.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I have experienced in both Pokemon and in Lorcana now that trading is significantly rarer despite them being trading card games. Players either spend all the money up front to get all the things they need, and then they're like, well, what do I need to trade for? Or players go, well, I'm going to need all of these good cards eventually, so while I'm working towards collecting them, why would I trade them? Like I have a binder right now for Lorcana where I've come to realize like that's how my play group is. That's how almost every group I've been to in person is nobody trades because everybody's like it's one of two things. It's either, bro, I already have anything. You don't have anything I need. Or it's, well, I'm going to need all of these cards. The only thing I have for trade is extra rares that everyone else already has extras of. And so I think there's a little bit of the flaw in the logic, no offense, but it's something I've only come to realize, which is that building on a budget is fine if you are just having fun.
Yeah.
And that's valid.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm not going to be a competitive player in Star Wars Unlimited as much as I think it's a great competitive game. And if somebody was to tell me, what do you think get the best competitive card game to get into right now is, it would be near the top of the list. If not the top, I'm not going to give it that quite yet because I need to spend a little more time in it.
Right,
but the problem, right, is that if you're going to play seriously, or if you're like me and you freaking hate losing, right? and you especially hate losing, and you especially hate losing when something's out of your control.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, I know I have a tendency to be a bit of a control freak for things like this, but it's like, I don't like losing to variants, but I really don't like losing because somebody has a $90 card, 3 copies that they shelled out for, and I don't have any.
Right.
That's no fun. Pay to win is that's no fun, and that's a legit thing. And the more that I think that you and I came up in card games, myself especially, just speaking from my experience, and like people traded, and I'm building this deck, and do you have extra copies of this? Well, I have this legendary that I'm not using, even though it's good. Here, I'll trade you my legendary for your legendary. Right. Nobody does that anymore, and especially because people like me and you, who are still playing card games, like even the full range of myself and Mark and you, that whole age range now has money.
True.
And just buys everything they need up front.
Yeah.
And so then it's so then like you either pay to get in, or you don't. And that's where someone like Curry, who has been hyping up Pokemon for so long, because it's the most affordable game.
It is by far.
And because that game is not designed to have a casual scene. It's designed to have the casual scene be the competitive scene. Right?
Yeah.
And for them to be, synonymous.
Well, and I think some of that is going to be solved if FFG encourages these alternate formats. I mean, they right off the bat are really encouraging sealed. which of course Magic, Friday Night Magic does a terrific job, selling packs for sealed. So people crack those packs, build their decks, do that, which I love to do. Sells packs. But in addition to that, if they, at some point encourage commons and uncommons, I don't know what you would call it, the Jawa Showdown or something. I don't know, Cantina Brawl or something. Who knows? But
that's fun.
But I mean, if they, that way you could start, getting into, the deck building, and you don't need 3 Vaders or 3 Bobas or something to that effect.
Well, you have Twin Suns now, which is a singleton format, so you only need 1 Vader for $90.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what's really interesting is I have been examining this in myself. So I have not played a physical card game since before Hearthstone. Not actively, not gone out and bought stuff for it. A little bit of Pokemon, a little bit of Lorcana. That's it.
Yeah.
So I got into this. I bought a box. I was like, I am frothing at the mouth. I need to get more. I bought a second box. I reached out to a guy, did a little bit of trading with him, got some pieces that were necessary for some shiny stuff that I had because I could care less about the shiny stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I got online and I was like, I need some singles to finish out these 2 decks. I spent $20 on singles and I got like 12 cards. Not bad. $20 on singles for 12 viable cards. I picked up I had some red 3s that I traded from. I needed, I think I needed for a cause I believe in, and a couple of others cards to flesh out a couple of things. And then I this week I ordered a set of Bobas. And you're right. Like I've been asking around to trade, but no one's trading me Bobas unless I trade away my Vaders, right? Like, and I cracked 3 Vaders naturally. I don't want to trade away my Vaders.
Right.
And so like no one's really like, they're keeping those. And so I'm like, well, the only way I'm going to get these things is I'm going to buy them. And I want to buy them as I'm hearing rumors about it selling out, because I don't want to lose the opportunity to get my hands on these copies of Bobas if they're going to get really expensive. And this is what's interesting to me, DBN. What is interesting to me is my time spent in digital card games has made me so used to finding the meta deck and then building it that I came back to physical card games, and that's just how I naturally thought. Like, I just naturally thought, like, now to be fair, I think very specifically in the case of Boba Fett, there isn't really a exchange for it. Like, that card fills a really unique niche, and so does Vader, which is one of the reasons they're so expensive right now. Which I think that Fantasy Flight needs to fix that in the next set. I think they need to create more cards that fit into that niche to kind of dilute that pool of they did a good job at overstatting and making Luke, Vader, and Boba specifically very strong because they're the most iconic characters that they were going to have in the set. They made them good and you want to play them. I think that's amazing. What ended up happening, and I'll pull up the prices right now, is that their prices have just gotten a little out of hand. Well, maybe really out of hand, in my opinion.
The prices are very out of hand. More out of hand than Lorcana, from first chapter. And I'll throw this out, and we can kind of look at these cards in particular, but just to put a bow on the... just thank you. To put a bow on the discussion around why people don't trade. As an example, like 2 weeks ago, I had an extra copy of Lucky Dime, which is a Lorcana legendary that at the time that I had it, 2 or 3 weeks into a new set, nobody was playing. Then over the course, and so then I had there's a kid in my local group that really wanted to make a deck with the Lucky Dime, and I said, okay, here, I'll trade it to you. I've got an extra. I've got 2 copies, and I'm going to hold on to one, but I'll trade you my other one because I know you really want it. And here, help me finish out a play set of these other rares, boom. Okay, great. And we had sort of an equal exchange of TCG player price, right? Not equal exchange of rarity status, equal exchange of TCG player price. Well, egg on my face, because a week later, that card made its way into a top meta deck that is now semi-defining the meta, and the card has quadrupled in price and I look like an idiot because I traded it away for $4 worth of rares that I could have eventually pulled elsewhere, you know? And that is, and you know, I have success stories from, basically, it's not just, the singles market has made card values like the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to play the stock market and lose, and similarly are afraid to play the card game trading business and look dumb a week later when, you know, a new card enters the meta because the internet has full access to meta reports now. Basically, the internet has ruined literal physical card trading. Okay, the internet has made it basically obsolete. Because everybody can see access to all the top decks. There's no deck secrets anymore, like back in the day with Versus, and before that Yu-Gi-Oh! And L5R, where it was just small forum boards and, you know, whatever, right? And small play groups trying to come up with the next best thing. Now, between the fact that everybody can see the history of the values of the cards, right? Like we're seeing Darth Vader on screen now at $87. And if you click on that on TCG Player and you scroll down to the graph, you can see how it shot up over, like, it went from $48 and basically doubled
80
to where it is
$90 now. It's $90 now.
And so imagine the player that traded it for $50 worth of other cards he needed and is now fuming because it jumped up and doubled in price, right? And that's what everyone's afraid of. Should they be? I don't know. I mean, at a certain point, a legendary should be worth a legendary in my book, right? So if you do a 1-for-1 trade for legendary, but that's just not how it works, because the people that play these games typically have a ton of disposable income, and a lot of them have been, because these are newer games who are typically pulling people who have experience in other games, you know, they are conditioned by the ridiculous expense of games like Magic and One Piece, that, and Yu-Gi-Oh, that, $600 for a meta deck is standard. And they will defend that to the day they die because they're afraid to admit that they wasted a ton of money on pieces of cardboard.
Well, you know, Vader is his base right now. A couple days ago, pre-sellout, was it going at about 60, 65, and it's now up to 90. Vader in hyperspace is going for about 120. Invader in hyperspace foil. Now, granted, that's the true chase, right? So
that's the collector item.
Yeah, for the record, like, so a showcase leader is 1 in 12 boxes. A hyperspace foil legendary card is 1 in 20 boxes, and so it is more rare to have a hyperspace foil legendary than it is to have even a showcase. But those right now, which not long ago were a little less than this, the cheapest hyperspace foil is $250 of Vader.
Yeah,
now,
but that's fine.
Sure. I think my point is that how I'm saying that is I think FFG's plan was, hey, hyperspace foil will be the chase. Hyperspace will be the chase. People will go after those, and those prices will skyrocket. Those will be the ones that people want. That'll keep the price of Vader as a card down. But it just didn't happen because of how strong and playable Vader is in the two most prominent.
Well, and because they ran out of product, and now people are scalping them.
Yep, and now people are like, "Oh, okay, let's buy up everything that's left and sell these Vaders because this Vader pays for a box."
Again, TCGs have become, to many people, playing the stock market on a smaller scale.
Yeah, certainly can be. And you know what? Some of the prices haven't been bad. I want to be really clear that this does not mean that you can't get into this game and form a competitive deck at a reasonable price. I have been playing this last week. The only deck that I have basically all the pieces for is Iden Red, which is a control Iden list that does not run command. Doesn't ramp. It is a swath between, it is heavy space lane. It runs to control the ground lane and then win overpowering your opponent in the space lane. It is super fun to play. It's a mid-rangey but heavy control at the beginning of the game, and then you explode in the mid-game about 5 or 6 and take over and end it with the Emperor, which is a card that you get in the starter deck. If you bought every piece of my deck right now, the most expensive piece is Count Dooku at $2.38 a piece. you could sit down and build my Iden deck for probably $35. And it is not a B deck. Like, well, it might be a B deck, but it competes and beats all of the A decks. It's a very strong deck. So I will say this. The three meta decks that are getting all of the attention right now, Sabine, Iden, and Boba, all in green. I think while good, I think that there is just as viable other lists that are out there that if you do some experimenting, it's like it's the classic problem with like the meta slave thing that happens
Yeah.
in Hearthstone, except Hearthstone has way more data than Star Wars Unlimited has. And so there's limited data. All that it is a handful of influencers who have played a lot of stuff on Tabletop Simulator that are saying these are the three best decks. And it's super inflating the price of Vader and stuff. What we saw from this thing that you saw was a Chewie deck came out that was running Luke. Luke's only like $30 a pop right now. And Luke is
Only.
well, that's expensive,
Yeah.
but if that was the most expensive card, I don't think that's unreasonable for a game. I actually think that in a singles market, if you're going to go to your store and buy some cards, you're going to go online, buy some cards. If you needed a play set of a card and they were $30 a pop, $25 a pop, that's expensive, but I'm not saying that's outside of where a legendary theoretically could be.
Well, okay, could be or should be, right? Because, like, again, I think that is fine, just fine. I think that if that was the top end, if $30-$40 was the most expensive card, okay, I can tolerate that. I still don't think that that's ideal because, again, like, you want your you need to cater to your competitive players different than you cater to your collectors. Competitive players will happily play minimum rarity decks if they can have access to the cards, right?
Yep.
And the collectors, would love to have a card that is valued at $250, like that hyperspace foil Vader.
Right.
That's a good thing. I actually was very high on the idea of these hyperspace and foils and their overlap because it's a built-in way to make sure that the collector market has something to chase after and theoretically devalues the base min rarity versions of the staple cards, which is something that like Lorcana has no way to do, right? It's like there's like foil is the only way, and foil doesn't mean much in Lorcana because the foils are like just okay, right? And so I look at a game like this and I go, actually, I'm really impressed by the singles market for everything but the legendaries, and specifically the legendaries like Luke and Vader and Boba Fett that feel like they're staples and feel like, how do you replace these in a deck?
Yeah, I think that's the real problem is like, $9 for a vigilance, right? $11 for a command. Like
I think Avenger is another example of a card that it's like, boy, if you're playing like a ramp deck, like how do you replace this card? There's no replacing this card in a ramp deck.
Yeah, I think there are more things that replace a card like Avenger than there are things that replace Boba Fett or Vader.
Well, but I'm talking about this in the extent that like this is a more affordable legendary, and it still is a legendary because it's so unique.
Yeah. I think Devastator kind of falls into a similar location for ramp decks at $760 a piece, but I agree with you that there, and I can't tell if the problem is the print rates and drop rates of these cards, just need to see more of them, or if the problem is that there has been a higher demand than Fantasy Flight was prepared for, and they kept up with it in the first week pretty well.
Yeah,
like they were like, get it out there, get it out there, get it out there.
It's a perfect storm of those things. The prices will come down. They will come down as soon as more cards are out.
That's just supply and demand, right?
For sure. But I do think you actually are right in that I think the drop rate on legendaries might be a little too low. I would love to
1 in every 8 packs, something like that.
Yeah, I mean Lorcana is 1 in 7, I believe, and that feels like an appropriate drop rate. But 1 in 7 at scale of you playing the game for a while versus 1 in 8 will be huge difference in terms of having enough cards in circulation, right? That players can spend $20 to get the bestest cards, and the cards that would otherwise be, that right now, like Avenger sitting at $20 might be $10. And the cards sitting at $10 might be $5.
Right. And Vader will
I
come down to
think-
like 50 instead of 100, when that starts happening. But you brought this up.
The hyperspaces are still going to be
Oh, yeah.
valuable to the people that want to be the whales. Like, you have to feed the whales.
Yes, you do.
Okay? And they're doing a great job of that. It's baked into the system, which is very impressive. So,
Well, again, another connection with Lorcana, and Ian, you've brought this up before, is that your legendary shouldn't be your best necessarily the best cards in the game. They should be the really unique ones that you build around. And unfortunately, this is kind of a perfect storm. It's an iconic character. Everybody loves Vader. Everybody loves Boba. Everybody loves Luke. They're really powerful cards, and then the artwork is really great. So I mean, there you go. It just drives the price up.
And they're flexible cards.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to build around. Like, let's be real. You don't have to build too hard around Vader.
If you have Vader, it's going in these colors. Yeah.
It's just good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like
Vader, Luke, and Boba are all just straight up good stuff,
right.
strong legendaries. You don't have to build around.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I think it'll be interesting to see what the single market does. We said earlier, maybe, I don't know if it was on the show or not, but the price of a box went from like 95 to 140, I think, in the last 2 days. And it's definitely going to be one of those seasons where people are going to be pumping their brakes and saying, hold up, I think I'm happy with what I have. I'll play with what I have. I'm not investing any more money into this game until they do a reprint. Fantasy Flight has announced there is a reprint coming with set 2. They're going to reprint set 1, so it is coming in July, so it's not all that far out.
No.
So we will see new stuff. I'm glad they have been responsive in that. They've also announced and released artwork for Mandalorian, for Moff Gideon, for Rey as well, in the sleeves and deck boxes and stuff for set 2. What was that? And the Rancor. Yeah. And they have announced that set 1 cosmetics and stuff like the boxes and the card sleeves and stuff are evergreen. They're going to keep printing those. So we'll get another run of those in July. Set 2 will not be. So if you want to get your Rancor mat or your Mandalorian mat or your Mando sleeves or your Rey sleeves, you're only going to be able to get those when set 2 comes out until supplies are gone. And the supplies for set 1 sold out before the cards sold out. So
I kind of want the Rancor playmat so bad.
Rancor playmat's really good. I have trouble not running a double stitched edged playmat at this point in my life because I bought a lot of like third-party ones. And because all of my normal playmats kind of end up with frayed edges.
Right.
But if these things are made really nice, maybe I'll pick up one too.
They're what you'd expect. They're not double stitched, but I think they're pretty good quality. And ultimately, I think I will say, if I can complain about one thing, I feel like I've done a lot of complaining, but I haven't really meant it to be negative, but just rather like I think I have a lot of thoughts on the singles market, and I think that I hold games to a higher standard for supporting their competitive players and not financially gouging their competitive players. Now that I've played Pokemon, and so, anyways, I will say the X-Wing playmat, fantastic. TIE Fighter playmat, they did something I really didn't like, which was they took a piece of artwork which was intended to show movement by blurring a portion of the star field and stuff on one side of the TIE Fighter, and part of its wing is blurred to show movement. Except it looks awful on a playmat, and you start to get a headache when you look at it. Please, GameGenic, please don't do that. Keep everything in focus. And don't give me a headache, because I had to stop looking at the playmat. The X-Wing one didn't do that. Why'd you do that on the TIE Fighter? I think that if it was in focus, the whole thing, I think the TIE Fighter playmat would be my favorite. It looks really good, except for the blurring. So
yeah, I haven't messed around with the playmats much. I have a Star Wars desk mat that I've been playing over webcam, and now everything's sold out. All of that I can say is this: the deck pods are amazing. I'll say that.
I just bought one.
Oh, let's go. Which color did you pick?
I got a red double pod.
Nice.
Red Double Pod.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah, I'd
jeez.
spent a little too much money on it, but you know what? Treat yourself.
Treat yourself. Well, guys, I think that's going to end our second episode talking about Star Wars Unlimited. Man, these have not been short episodes, short recordings, because we've been really digging into the content around this game. So I think that all goes to show, like, in all of the positive and negative stuff that we said about it, we think the world of this game enough to sit for an hour and a half and talk about
That's
it.
fair.
There's
Yes.
a lot to say about it. A lot to say about it. But
Yeah, I mean, compared to some of our episodes on like Warp Forge, where we were like, okay, can we be done now?
Yeah, 15 minutes in, we're like, we don't want to play this. This game sucks. Please don't make us play it again.
That's right.
Please, Dad, no, I don't want to play it.
We need to think of a name for the end of the year awards for worst game of the year. Like, we need to have like a, the equivalent of like the Mr. Irrelevant in the NFL draft.
Yeah, the movies
we
call
need
them
that.
the golden turkeys, is what they, so yeah, there's got to be.
We need something like that. We need so if you're listening,
well, Warp Forge, you already won.
That's right.
It's only March.
We don't know that yet. There's still several months left in the year. All right, we could play something worse than Warp Forge, but that would be a funny discussion. But if you're listening, get in the comments, get in the Discord, and tell us what you think the name for this the trash award for the year should be.
Yeah. Well, guys, Ralph, thanks for being on again this week.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Ian,
I love to talk games.
Yeah, great to be back in the studio. And hey, thanks for everyone who's listened in on this episode as we've rambled at nauseum about Star Wars Unlimited.
Great game.
Appreciate you guys tuning in and listening, and be sure to come back for next episode. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of Starter Set. As always, we really appreciate you, and we would love to get to know you a little bit and have you join our community. So come over and join us on Discord. There is a link to that in the description of this episode, and you can grab a hold of that and come over and hang out with us over there. We have a growing community, playing some card games, even began playing some webcam games of Star Wars Unlimited together over there. So we'd love to have you come by, hang out, let us know what you're cracking in Star Wars Unlimited. What are you into? What other card games would you like to see us cover? That's it. We'll see you there. Thanks for listening, guys. See you in the next episode. Welcome back. Wait, how do I do it? Was that
you go? Hey, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that. Here we go.
Or maybe maybe we just leave this in.
But maybe it's just post show. Here we go. Hey! Welcome back to the post.
That's
show.
the one.
Hayes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Ding.
The post show, now known as the Booster Pack.
That's right.
Booster Pack. Yes.
Booster Pack. Crack those packs.
Yeah. I don't think we even told, like, Gibby's gonna find out. Well, like, he's probably not gonna listen to these episodes.
Probably not.
So he's probably gonna find out that it's called the Booster Pack the next episode.
I think you'll like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll
like it.
He loves things to be themed.
He does. Yeah, and it's on theme. Like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's
Except when we play our next, like, card game that doesn't have booster packs in it. But that's fine. Let's be real. Like, even when we're playing a digital card game, the booster pack is when we just talk about the other games we're playing anyway. Most of the
I mean, a lot of times, yeah.
Yeah.
The booster pack will now be populated by Star Wars Unlimited in perpetuity.
Yeah, Star Wars Unlimited, Lorcana, Pokemon.
Yep, all of them.
Yeah, conversation will happen on those things here for sure. Speaking of, there's kind of a war in the Discord about all of them, and poor Ian is pulled in all three directions.
That's
He feels like
it's
we've
a battle
also had
for my
ropes to him.
soul.
Yeah. If we got like one more like game out there that we could get you into and tie a rope on the last limb,
Oh yeah.
we could do like a a gif of you being drawn and quartered by four different card games.
Four different card games. Yeah, and then it's just my wallet in the middle. You know.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah.
the thing. Like your old dead broke nerd hasn't
coming
been
back
true.
with a vengeance.
Yeah, in order. Like now, it's not just like I can't afford one game. Like we have to stack multiple games on top of you.
You're looking at gainfully employed nerd. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
That's my name now. Oh yeah. You know.
Just me like with Ralph on here, just trying to convince his son to go poor. He's like,
That's
hey,
right.
Don't, hey.
You know, honestly, it's one of those things too, where like I definitely am cognizant that I've been spending a lot of money in the last couple months. Part of it being like being out of a job for a while, I had gotten so stingy, and now it's kind of nice to sort of flex my, my paycheck for a little bit and sort of lean into my hobbies a little bit harder for a bit. But I mean, realistically speaking, like, I'm really happy. I'll just say this, that Star Wars Unlimited is every 4 months and not every 3 months.
Yeah.
And so it's only 3 times a year, which will save my wallet quite a bit, because I don't think I'm really going to get into this game super hardcore, but I do enjoy it enough to want to like keep up with it casually, and I want to have a Twin Suns deck that I can take places and, maybe go to some, casual play nights or something like that and just enjoy Star Wars. And the other thing I'll say is Pokemon really is cheap, guys. It's a very minimal financial investment.
Yeah,
it is a cheap game.
I have found that to be the case that, when Ian said, Dad, I need to practice against a Snorlax deck, I'm like, okay. So I went on and net decked and started looking it up. And I mean, I had it in no time. One card was a little bit pricey, a Forest Seal Stone, but I found it, like discounted about half price. I'm like, if I bought a, starter deck, one of those advanced battle decks, that'd be a lot of money. So I just grabbed this one. So now I have like a tier 1 deck or 1.5 deck, it's like, it didn't cost me anything, and I don't even really know how to play it that well. But there it is, and it was easy to put together.
Now when we hang out, I get to have somebody to run I don't want to, I don't really want to play Snorlax, but I need practice against it. And I also need practice in a safe space where I can flounder to my heart's content until I learn how to play against the stupid thing. So, but
Pokemon is ridiculously affordable to play.
It's so affordable.
Meta.
I mean,
I was like looking the other day and I'm like, I want to get Brooklyn into it in like the more competitive form. And I have one deck. And I was like, oh, man, I don't really have the money. How much am I going to do? And I was like, $23. I can buy the elite box, and then I can get the spares that I need for $23. And I'm like, I just spent $150 on 3 Boba Fett's.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What you guys need to do. What you guys need to do, you got it all wrong. You need to buy the packs, and then you need to get together with Gibby and have him open them.
Oh,
and you'll pull
Vader,
Boba,
Hey,
that's what you need to do.
He's moving back to Virginia, so I'm going to just take all my packs to him and just weekly delivery,
It's amazing.
I think I have I was talking to Curry about this. I think I am the yin to his yang, in that like his luck is immaculate and my luck for both any sort of randomness, as well as like just general, if something can go wrong, it will. I mean, I've sworn off of electric generator decks in Pokemon because I just, despite stacking as many energies as I do, I never seem to hit them. Coin flips, no siree. Not going to do any coin flipping in Pokemon if I can avoid it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not that it doesn't, like, for most people, at a 50-50 shot, it all shakes out in the end. But for me, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And so I have to limit variance as much as possible because I am the anti-Gibby.
I am well, I think all of us to a certain extent are a bit anti-Gibby in terms of none of us are that lucky. Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
no, well,
Ooh.
he's not on the show. We're all no, Gibby, we're not anti you. Just none of us are as lucky as you. Um, well, guys, what do we want to talk about real quick on the end of this was just what Star Wars characters that exist out there that do not have a card yet would we be super pumped to see a card? Like if you can think of like set two's getting announced and
Mhm.
this card gets announced as a rare or as a legendary, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I gotta get my hands on that card.
Man, honestly, it's like so many actually, because
You can name a couple, sure.
we love Star Wars. I really need a Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon is my boy, one of my favorite characters. I mentioned this last episode. I also just think he fits really nicely into this Force Ghost thing that we've got with Yoda and Obi-Wan, where when they're defeated, you buff up your other Force units. And I think, that will work really, really nicely. And just a sort of a perfect little transition there. Now, obviously, we've got plenty of villain characters we can include. I mentioned this last time. Cad Bane. I desperately need Cad Bane, like so bad.
Yes.
But you know what I thought about the other day? I've been a huge fan of the Bad Batch show on Disney Plus. And if they ever do a set that's like kind of focused on clones and clone related things, boy, I know that we have, Commander Cody, we have Captain Rex, right? We have a couple clones, but the Bad Batch would really stand out as some like unique characters to include, in those, and potentially, depending on which ones you have, you wouldn't have to make all of them good guys, because they're really, I don't know if you've watched the show, but they're, some of them are good guys, like Echo is firmly like hanging out with Rex, doing, early rebel, machinations, right? But then you've got, some like Crosshair, who actually works for the Empire for a while and and splits off of the rest of his clone troop. And then you've got others that they're just in it to survive. They would make good fits for like, being in not as hero or villainy, but just being dedicated to one color or even a two color thing. I think that would be a perfect fit for this game as a way to incorporate some slightly lesser known characters. But this is the final season, currently airing weekly now. I promise this isn't sponsored by Disney. But the show's great and I love it. And I'm really attached to those characters. And I've always been a sucker for clone troopers. So this would be just a really great, I think, way to work in some unique characters that really makes the clone thing feel special.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that too. Ralph,
Yeah.
how about you? What characters do you really want to see in the card game come to the card game?
I'd like to start as a category. I'd love to see some of the animals, banthas and tauntauns. And, the one that I can't think of what kind of creature it was, but right when Obi-Wan was chasing Grievous and had that lizard thing that ran really fast.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what kind of creature it was, but, those kind of guys.
We have a Wappa.
Yeah, we do. So I'd like to see that. Dexter from episode 2, Dexter Jester had was a friend of Obi-Wan's. It had the diner, it had the forearms.
I think it's is it Daxter?
Is it Dax?
That might be it.
No, Dexter.
Dexter's Diner. You're right. Dexter's...
Yeah, Dexter Jester. I just thought he was kind of cool, and we only saw him the one time, and I just think that'd be kind of a neat thing. I think his diner might be a cool base. At some point, with a 25 base that would do something.
That's
and
a fun one.
You could even do the artwork like the classic thing where you got all the different Star Wars guys sitting around having a coffee or whatever.
That'd be funny.
The other thing that I would like to see, frankly, is not character based, but I would hopefully, not to borrow too much from Lorcana, but you know how Lorcana introduced locations? We have locations in a sense. But
bases,
But if we had almost like destinations, and that you would have to take some resources, like the Death Star. It would be something that a loop deck might bring out that if they manage to conquer it would get some sort of bonus against it, their side that they're playing. So you have to deal with that. And almost like side quests, that you would have to do that would be based on famous Star Wars locations. You have to go and get some training on Dagobah. And if you go there and, your attacks are maybe point, tokens on it, then boom, all your characters for the rest of the game get +1/+1 or something like that. Okay, so does the other side ignore it and let you finish that and come on in? And that way we could start seeing, more than just attacking, a base on Hoth or command center, whatever. We could start seeing all these cool places that, the people went to and they had to travel to, to go and accomplish something. And I mean, you look at The Mandalorian, the show, he's on his ship and he's going to different places and accomplishing different things as he's trying to avoid, Moff Gideon from chasing down Baby Yoda. And, those kinds of things. I guess we need a Grogu card at some point. Yeah.
Well, can I add on to that? Because you just gave me an idea, which is like, what I think would also be cool would be a base with 35 health, but a negative effect.
Yes. Yes.
Or an action that your opponent gets to use whenever they want.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I do think you're right, though. I think it would be great to see, if not location cards to go in the ground lane or whatever. That seems clunky, maybe. But to have bases be more like the ones that have actions, and to see more bases with a wider range of customizability, and really see them lean into like having more things like Tarkin Town and, whatever, energy conversion lab and stuff. And instead of those being the outliers, making them the norms, and doing more with that.
And, just this is an FFG game, and they've got the designers that have done Marvel Champions and have done Lord of the Rings. Those bases could start to have, their own goals for your side to achieve, as well as getting beat up, during the course of the game. And, since we're talking about formats too, I'd love to see a raid version.
Mode. I knew you were going there. I knew it.
Yeah. That was one of the most fun things in L5R was in Legend of the Five Rings was one person you get a special raid kit and would play as many people on the table as possible.
It got complicated. I have a picture.
It did.
I have a picture somewhere of like 6 of us playing against one person using the raid deck, and the table, this whole huge table
table.
And we're not even sitting we're not.
Table.
We're standing around it.
Move that here
because everyone has to be able to see all the things on everyone else's board as we're debating how to. And then you got the one player who's playing the raid boss sitting there like just laughing, almost like a DM, in a role playing game, just sitting there. Yeah, that'd be cool.
You could have like Palpatine at the end of episode 9, and with all his ships, and then you just bring your decks and try to take him down. But
I think that
anyway,
I think there's a ton of cool stuff that they could do with this game that especially because of FFG's experience in making cooperative card games, that if you could take this and make a fun cooperative game, it would be a whole new reason and level to play it.
Yeah, for sure.
Imagine your local game shop getting together, and there is a game master, right? The store owner runs it, and there's a box of stuff that he gets, right, that's unique to the game store. And you all get together, and the rules are you have to play Rebels and you have to destroy the Death Star, right? And you as a whole store, 10 players at a time are going to fight to destroy the Death Star while your store owner is trying to destroy all of your decks and bases. How fun would that be? I mean, that would be really fun. That would be a really fun experience, I think. And so I could totally see in the future, I hope that FFG does take directions like that, because I think they have the ability to at this game because of how many large-scale, incredibly epic, iconic battles are out there. Now, as far as cards that I want to see in this game, I'll be perfectly... I think the one that would have me the most psyched is Maul. I think, Episode 1, pre-cut in half Darth Maul in aggression, in aggression villainy list. Now, I'm saying Darth Maul as a card, not as a leader. Like, specifically
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
Yeah.
card that plays in an aggression Empire list that actually is aggro. Because the only two aggressive decks in the game right now are both Rebel, right? In both Sabine and theoretically equally Leia. There's only really one reason for that, and that's because Leia can't as easily lane dodge. And so what you do with
Mhm.
Sabine is you use her ability round 1 to see which lane your opponent plays into, and then you play in the opposite one at the beginning of the game in order to push damage. Leia can't do that. That's neither here nor there. The point is I want an aggressive aggro style Empire deck that wants to play sort of like a mad like an angry Maul character. And
Yeah.
I think that would be freaking cool. You know, if it had, honestly, one of the ones that is just like my favorite character to be in any game is in this, and that's K2SO. And like,
Mhm.
I just freaking love that K2's in the game already. And there's a lot of characters that are already, I feel like they've captured a lot of people's absolute favorite characters. Kit Fisto is another one that I'd really like
Big
to see
fan.
in the
Big
game.
fan. Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
really like Kit Fisto. So he's one too. I mean, there's so many Star Wars pieces of the universe that are unexplored in the base set, and they've been very clear. They're spanning everything. They're not dedicated to just one specific season or one specific time frame in Star Wars. They were like, nope, we're spanning all the Star Wars universe with this game. So they're thinking big when it comes to what they're going to print, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of cool ways to handle that, and the dynamic of like you can make a character a leader or not a leader, and what that implies. Both.
Yeah.
Gives you a
Close.
lot of design space to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing General Akbar as a leader. I think because he's only a card right now, General Akbar
Yeah.
leader would be fun.
I would love
like
to
that.
see a General Grievous that whenever he defeats a character in combat, he takes their upgrades. Just like he takes the lightsabers
The
from all the
lightsabers.
Jedi he kills.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
That'd be super fun. Yeah. Oh man. Well, there's a lot of stuff that we'd love to see, and obviously Star Wars has always gotten our hopes up and let us down, usually not too nicely. But our hopes are high. Our hopes are high
Yes.
for the future of Star Wars Unlimited. And next week, we'll be wrapping up our final episode talking about plus or minus, thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we think we're going to keep playing this game? If I don't play it for a long time, my wife will murder me for how much money I've spent on it. So it better be my hobby for a long time.
There you go.
But we'll talk about that next episode for sure, along with talking about where we're going with the show next. Thanks for sticking around for the post-show banter, everybody. And we'll see you in the next episode.